Let's go live now to the seat of Kooyong in Melbourne. The former Prime Minister John Howard joins me. Mr Howard, thanks for your time. How damaging would it be for the Liberal Party and, in your view, the nation if Josh Frydenberg were to lose that seat, regardless of who forms government next week?
Well, Josh Frydenberg, more than any other man or woman in Australia, has presided over our tremendous economic recovery. And to lose a person such as this against that background would, of course, be a terrible shame and a great loss for Australia. But I am optimistic that Josh will hold Kooyong. I really am. But I'm not taking him for granted, and neither is he. I've walked around the electorate with him just in today, and he's popular, he's well known, he's diligent. He doesn't take anything for granted. I mean, Josh is one of those politicians who always assumes that he might lose, and that's a good safeguard to have. It's those who take people for granted who lose, and in some circumstances deserve to lose. Well, that will never be said about Josh Frydenberg, despite the fact that he's got the busiest job in the government, apart from being Prime Minister, and I've held both the job he's got now and the Prime Ministership, so I think I can say this, that despite all of that, he remains an incredibly focused local member. People talk about how he helps them in different ways. He's very well known in the community, and he is in every way quintessentially a great local member.
Why has the Liberal Party, why in your traditional seats like Kooyong, Wentworth, traditional blue ribbon seats, you're facing this threat from teal independence? How has it come to this in your view?
Well, I don't think you can say it's come to this with an air of finality. I mean, we haven't had the votes yet. We haven't lost any of these seats. I don't know what is going to happen. I find this a very hard election to call. I've participated in a lot of elections, and I find this a harder one to call than just about any I can recall. Now, there are people who, in some of these seats, who I think have this funny idea that they can sort of send a message to the Liberal Party by voting for an independent but still have a Liberal government. Well, could I say to them, forget it. If you want a Liberal government, you've got to vote for a Liberal candidate. Simple as that. And I'm optimistic, but I never took anything for granted when I was in politics, and I don't now. And I'm working hard for the Liberal Party, both to repay the enormous support it gave me for many years, but also because I believe in it. And I believe in the Prime Minister, and I believe in his deputy, Josh Frydenberg, who's been a great treasurer for our country. And I want to see him continue for years and years into the future as the member for Kooyong.
After around a decade in office, or when you're searching for a fourth term, as you secured, it's not a common occurrence. Why is it such a hard threshold to overcome?
Well, the longer you're in office, inevitably, no matter how good or you may be, you upset people. People get a bit tired of you. It's just human nature. And I found going for that fourth term very difficult, but we got it. And I know that the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, is taking everything very, very seriously because he understands what's at stake.
Scott Morrison's own unpopularity is a big issue for the government here. Do you think the modern media cycle has intensified the scrutiny on the Prime Minister in the current sort of climate that we face in politics in Australia?
Look, I read a lot about the so-called unpopularity of the Prime Minister. I don't find it. I find a lot of respect for him. But inevitably, if you take tough, important decisions, you're going to upset some people. I went through periods of great unpopularity. There were times when you couldn't give me away, as far as some people in the community were concerned. That's just the nature of politics. The important thing is to be able to say to the public, to look them in the eye and say, I did what I believed was right. Look at my record. And if you look at what the record of Scott Morrison and Josh Frydenberg is, they have presided over this amazing economic recovery. I mean, to think that we are contemplating an unemployment rate with a 3 in front of it, the best in 50 years. And in the end, the most important thing in the labour market is to give people a chance of a job. And people have a better chance of a job in Australia now than they've had at any time over the last 50 years, despite the pandemic. Now, who are the two people most responsible for creating those circumstances? It's Scott Morrison and Josh Frydenberg.
The Prime Minister, though, says he'll change his approach if he wins. What do you make of this idea of a post-election makeover by him?
Look, that's the language of commentators, what you've just used. I mean, Scott Morrison can talk about Scott Morrison. I can talk about him, but from a different perspective, and I'll talk about John Howard. But as far as Scott Morrison's personality is concerned, that's a matter for him to talk about. I've always found him the most easygoing, but very direct and committed person.
But before you go, I know you've got a busy afternoon. You've been campaigning with Josh Frydenberg and others there in Melbourne. But the super first home buyers, access to superannuation, are you comfortable with this? Or does this reflect a Liberal Party that's maybe not as committed to superannuation as Labor is?
No, I don't think. I am very supportive of the proposal. I think it shows imagination, it shows balance. It doesn't undermine super. I mean, some of the people in the super industry are yelling their heads off. There's a bit of self-interest in that. It does not undermine super, but what it does do is give young aspiring home buyers access to their own money so they can begin a process of buying their own home. I think that's a wonderful double.
Former Prime Minister John Howard, I appreciate your time. Thank you.